Thank you for joining us on our journey here to preserve the history of mixed martial arts. When I wanted to take on this project, I needed help. I brought in one of my favorite matchmakers, Miguel, and the MMA detective, Mike Davis. So to do this, we've been able to preserve history. Welcome and enjoy.
Welcome back to the Lights Out Podcast. I'm Miguel Irani, and I am joined once again, as always, by the MMA detective. We've got Chris Lytle waiting in the wings, and we've got another deep dive interview of the old school variety. Mike, I'm excited. What about you?
All right. My favorite era of the UFC features this guy, and I'm a huge fan, Scott Ferrozzo. The Pitbull Scott Ferrozzo fought Tank Abbott. The only reason he wanted to get to the UFC was so he could fight Tank. And somebody had mentioned Ferrozzo in one of the comments. I think of either the clips or the long form channel. And man, that kind of sent us on a mission, Miguel. Somebody mentioned Scott Ferrozzo. We're in. We got to nail that. So we got the Pitbull. We're going to do a full career deep dive, and we'll probably dabble into the backyard fight and then close it out.
Yeah, he was done by UFC 12 or right around there, the Ultimate, or right around there. And he fought in Puerto Rico. He fought some legendary UFC stuff. So we'll see what kind of memory lane trip we get from the Pitbull. Very excited, very excited.
Absolutely.
And he was larger than life when he was, on TV and you're watching him and stuff. So I'm looking forward to it.
Not only was he like larger than life, he was sometimes uncomfortably large and didn't care. So it's gonna be a fun interview, I'm sure. Also, guys, we are growing. Like, it's crazy the growth that we're seeing. And I know we keep saying it, but it's true. We keep seeing like 25-30% growth every single month. And the only reason that happens is because you guys are sharing it. So if you guys can please do us a solid, we will continue pushing this type of content. So Miguel, why don't we get going with the interview? Ladies and gentlemen, Scott Ferrozzo.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to another episode here. Very excited today. We do deep dives all the time. A lot of fighters you guys know and love. But this one is another special one. We've had a couple like this before, but back to the beginning. This is, I know it's hard to find somebody who started before me because I'm old as hell, but we found somebody. We found somebody who was there from the beginning. One of the people who made me watch this sport and be like, oh, I got to try this, So one of the original people, one of the people love, and can't wait to find out a lot more about this guy's career, Scott Ferrozzo. Scott, how you doing, brother?
Can't complain, brother. How you doing?
Oh man, just happy to be here today, man. This is a cool one. We're like nerdy little kids. Just excited to be here today.
That's good. That's good.
And I got below me, I got Mike, the MMA detective, Miguel. I'm sure you know. So Mike, Miguel, take it away. Help me out here.
Miguel.
Scott, it's a pleasure. It definitely. I can tell you, I saw all of your fights that are listed on Sherdog and stuff, all of them back in the day. Obviously the UFC ones, but I was checking out the one they listed in Atlanta with Steve Grimau, and I actually watched that. I got that mailed to me on VHS. And an interesting thing about that fight, not to start off with too much stuff, but that Steve Grimau, he doesn't show up on Sherdog, he doesn't say anything. But I had a tape of him fighting Don Frye under the exact same circumstances. So he was
really?
in that same dojo with the poles in the way and stuff like that. He had a fight with Frye too that, I got on VHS somewhere. So you are a legend from the old days, man. So we're going to talk.
So Scott, I think we need to kind of define what Miguel said. So I think there's a lost fight that Miguel is talking about. And then there's a fight listed online.
I checked it. I think it's the same thing. Because it's a blue dojo. It's a blue mat with gray patterns.
With the windows.
Yeah. So Mike's got questions about it.
Right.
Mike,
so let's kind of quantify that fight. So that fight is actually listed after your UFC. It's actually 2 weeks after your Post-Bohlander fight. Did it take place prior to that or after it?
It took place prior to that.
That's what I thought.
So what it was is that the guy you saw reffing, that was the world famous John Longstreet.
Oh, okay.
So John Longstreet, I got involved with John Longstreet by just calling him up and saying, "Hey, listen, there's this new fighting on TV, and I'd like somebody to train me. And I saw you on TV a few times, and I'd like to talk to you." That's how my relationship started with John Longstreet.
Okay, so on like Sure Dog, it's listed that like Jeremy Horn was headlining. There's no way Jeremy Horn headlined that. Am I correct?
No, nothing. No. So
Matt Anderson.
Yeah,
It was
just
okay.
me and him. Just me and that guy.
Okay.
Can you mind if I go back? I mean, what was your athletic background? What did you growing up? I mean, were you were an athlete, obviously. I mean, how did you go from A to B? How did you even get there? What did you do growing up?
So I played football and wrestled and ran track through high school. The truth is I was really mad at the world. So I played football as a very violent football player. I wrestled very violently. If you looked at me wrong, you were getting your ass kicked at 16, 17, 18 years old. I can remember the first fight I ever got in was my dad had a bar out in the middle of nowhere. And this guy, he had to be in his 30s, and I was 14 years old. He kept smarting off. And I looked at my dad, and my dad says, "Well, do it." And I beat the shit out of that guy, 14 years old.
Hey,
so going up through, high school and all that, and anybody can attest to this. We had a place called Hyde Park. Hyde Park in Las Vegas was kind of in the middle of where all the high schools were. And all the high school guys and all the jocks would all go down there on a Saturday night, and there'd be 200-300 kids.
Ooh.
And eventually, everybody started to fight. And I got a reputation. One night, I fought 3 guys in one time. And the last guy that came out of the crowd, I go, I really, this is a true, honest to God story. I go, "Who's next?" And this guy about 6'5" comes out and says, "I am." And at that point in time, I said, "Oh, well, this is it. It's over now for me."
It was your winning streak.
I got a punch in on him. I up, and he went straight down, and I got on top of him and punched him in the mouth, and it was over. But I had the reputation of being the toughest guy in Las Vegas, the high school. And just growing up in football playing and wrestling, and I wrestled. I went to 117-7 in my career wrestling. Wow. And I just was just a kind of guy, and going through. Go ahead.
I don't mean to interrupt you. You said you ran track. Now, come on, you shot put. You did shot put.
I put disc and ran the 440 relay with the weightman.
Did the pole vault.
Yep. Listen, God gifted me with speed.
Wow.
I ran a 4.640 at 290 pounds in college.
Why didn't you play football? I'm surprised I didn't recruit the hell out of you to play football.
No, I did. I got
in college
for a whole bit.
Oh, really?
In the NFL, I was too short. I had to go. I went in the USFL, and of course, they folded my second year, so that was the end of my football career.
Well,
nice.
were you also a 2-time state champion?
Yes.
For wrestling?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was funny. Just the other day, some guys were reminiscing on our high school page, and there was a school called El Dorado. They were like 270-0 in dual meets, never lost in like 12 years. And these guys were going, "Hey, yeah, you remember when we beat El Dorado?" So I had to chime in and go, "Yeah, we didn't beat El Dorado. That match came down to my match. If I would have won that match, we would have been the first school in 12 years to beat that school." But back then, remember in the 80s, 83, Jerry curl, remember the stuff with the hair?
Yeah.
So, of course, he slips out of my grasp, gets 2 points on the takedown, and I lose the match by a point.
Brutal.
Yeah, oh yeah,
so,
but I punished him in state. The coaches made him dry his hair, and yeah.
Well,
I punished that guy.
Mike, real quick, I got a question. I'm not most people think I'm like some sort of psychiatrist. I'm not, but I'm gonna ask this anyway. You say you were an angry kid. Do you have any idea what that anger was about, or just?
I just played football and wrestled like I wanted to kill somebody. I was just that. I was that violent. I was just, I wanted to dominate every single play. I wanted to dominate every single wrestler that I came across. I used to, so, in wrestling matches where everybody sits in the chairs behind the mat.
Oh, yeah.
I used to pace up and down screaming the guy's name that I was going to wrestle.
Just intimidating the hell out of him.
When the 96-pound guys were still on the mat, I'm screaming the guy's name for 45 minutes. So that's just the way I was. I had one guy when they said wrestle, he ran off the mat. It was hilarious.
So, Scott, what was your high school record? I found 117-7.
You just said that, Mike. Come on, keep up.
Okay, I'm sorry, dude. I tried.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a very good wrestling team, but sports was my kind of like my outlet. I didn't have my father, I mean, I don't know, most of my father was a gangster, so I didn't really have that, that kind of everybody sits down at dinner at 5 o'clock kind of upbringing.
The different type of
a lot of it was on my own, and so I kind of took care of myself. And
did your dad play for the Minnesota Vikings?
He did. He played with Carl Eller, Jim Marshall, all those purple people eaters.
Oh wow!
Yeah, let me tell you a story. So every year, Carl Eller goes to the Mall of America. Used to, anyways, go to the Mall of America and sign autographs. And I was there luckily one day, and I was with my son Logan, and we go up to Carl and I go, "Hey, Mr. Eller, my name is Scott Ferrozzo," and he looked at me, and he goes, "Your dad was the toughest guy I have ever seen." Remembered him to that day. And so that made me pretty proud, because I heard all that, that how my dad in his day was extremely tough. But Logan got to meet Carl Eller, and I thought that was a pretty cool story. And yeah, I'll never forget.
How long did you play in the NFL for?
My dad. So back in the day, you had to have a second job because they didn't pay anything.
Yeah.
My dad was an iron worker, and his second year he came out. I guess he hurt his back or something, and it was over for him.
Okay. So you had mentioned that your first fight ever, Steve Grinow, it took place at the Atlanta Judo Academy. So in essence, you're living in Minnesota. Rather than try to find something within the Midwest, which was available at the time, like in terms of fighting, you went all the way to Atlanta. Am I correct?
Well, somehow, somebody contacted John Longstreet, the guy that threw the fight in Atlanta. Was kind of a freak. He wrote "Mama Gonna Knock You Out" for LL Cool J. He was a music producer.
Okay.
And he was a kind of a really freak about these fights, but I'm not really sure how he got a hold of Longstreet. But that fight was the first fight that I was ever in my life that I wasn't mad at the guy or there was an issue. Nothing. We sat down next to each other, put our shoes on, and talked and bullshitted before the fight, and then we got up and fought. And he was pretty tough.
Now, here's a question on a dojo fight like that. I mean, was there even any money involved? I don't understand.
Nothing. No, there was nothing involved. Nothing.
Was there a public? Because it doesn't look like much.
No.
So what was the motivation? Just to get it done, or make a tape?
Because I believe that at that time, the UFC had flown me out to Buffalo.
Okay.
And was talking to me, and so then I came home, and maybe that's how it happened. But I needed a fight. I needed one fight to get into that we're not mad at each other, and because I've never fought a guy like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how that went down, and then. Longstreet put it together, and we were just in this dojo, and we got it on. It was just me and him fighting. That was it.
He ate some hellacious shots.
That dude was a Navy SEAL, and he was tough as freaking nails.
He was absolutely Steve Grinow was UFC ready. 100% at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. Like I said, I had a tape of that from back in the old days, and there's a good chance that Joe Silva sent that to me, just in case. But I had seen that there, and like I can tell you, on another one of those lost tapes when we used to trade tapes and stuff, that dude fought Don Frye in the same circumstances. So he was some type of doorman or something, but you know what I mean? Because I don't know why, but you said you were in Buffalo. They flew you out to the UFC there as a alternator.
Correct. Do you want to know how the story came about with how I actually got in contact with the UFC?
Oh, absolutely. That's why we're here.
We're here.
Yeah.
So what happened is that I was selling toy tin robots, battery operated robots from the 50s and 60s, and this guy kept buying $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a week from me. And he would send me this cash next day air in a FedEx envelope. And then I would send him his robots, And then one day I just decided, hey, what do you do for a living? He goes, I put on pay-per-view shows. And I said to him, do you know the guys at the UFC? He goes, yeah, they're all my buddies. I said, well, and by this time, my friend weeks earlier had said, hey, Scott, come on over to my house. There's this new fighting on TV. They got to come over and see it. So I went over there and said, oh, yeah, I can do that. Thinking, I was 20 years old again. And so he calls, we start talking and goes, yeah, hold on. He hangs up the phone, and 20 minutes later, he said, yeah, I got you an interview. And that's how it all started.
Wow.
Who did you talk to from the UFC?
Well, I went out first, and unfortunately, we're getting old. My memory's kind of fading. I got 17 concussions at least, and so names for me are. But I think it was Merwitz.
Meyerowitz.
Yeah, Bob Meyerowitz. We spoke on the phone, and I told my background and told him a lot of things that what I did, and either he checked up on me, but because a week later I was on a flight to Buffalo. And, they all met me. They all treated me very well. I got to meet Fang. Do anybody remember Fang?
Oh,
he's one of our favorites, actually.
Francesco Maturi.
I was always wondering what happened to that dude. And I was there having, we had a great time. That's when Tank was, I think he got banned or something. He was there in the crowd. And I look at Marowitz and I go, hey, I'll go over and kick his ass right now. Because I didn't like Tank. He was a bully.
Well, that didn't happen then. That happened at UFC, like in Puerto Rico, which was UFC VIII. That was your debut. So
that was my debut, but
that was your debut.
I was in Buffalo, and for them to meet me, and and then Tank was in the crowd, and Morowitz looks at me. I'll never forget the day he looks at me right in the eye and go, "You touch him, you'll never get in the UFC."
Woo,
That's
really?
That's what he said. Yeah. And I said, okay.
The thing with Tank, it's just so kind of frame it properly. Tank would go to the early UFCs with this group of guys, and essentially they were gangbanging. Like they would fist fight, taunt, harass, jump in the elevator with somebody, and all of them kind of, talk smack to somebody. Tank would go to the UFCs, a place that had fighters available, trying to fight for free. Can we agree on that?
Yeah.
Yeah, at UFC VII, probably the reason he didn't fight was some, like Scott referred to, an unofficial ban for beating up Pat Smith in Denver. I think it was at UFC 5. So
that's exactly what. Yeah.
So
let's start with
a lot of stuff going on.
Let's go with UFC 8, February 16th, 1996. It's an event billed as David versus Goliath. It's in Puerto Rico, and you fight Jerry Bohlander.
Yep.
All right. Did you have concerns coming into that bout because Bohlander was from the famed Lion's Den gym?
No, didn't intimidate me at all. No, in fact, I didn't even know who they were. I mean, basically get in the ring and go. I mean, that's how it was. But like a dummy, and being a novice, I wore a singlet. And I think that was my issue because he had that thing wrapped around my neck most of the fight.
So
that's
Jerry Bohlander
rules, man.
Yeah, wait. So let me just kind of frame this, Miguel. So Jerry Bohlander is weighing 200 pounds. You're every bit of 300.
Okay.
Scott, you guys, I'm telling you at home, you guys got to see the walkout is amazing. Scott comes out in what I think is best described as like a Jay's potato chip bag, like on him with like the arms cut out. And then on the front, it says like "Fear Me," but the back, Scott, would you tell us what was supposed to be on the back as opposed to what it appears like?
Well, it was a man getting beat up by a pit bull dog.
Chris, it's a shirtless dude like reaching for help, like he's like trying to grab the edge of like a cliff, and it looks like the pit bull's mounting him.
Yeah,
it looks like Scott is like pro bestiality with a "Fear Me," potato chip bag coming to the cage.
beautiful.
That thing's still floating around somewhere out there.
I'll believe it.
I'll buy that. To me, that's like a holy grail thing.
Listen,
big special number.
Yeah, I sold it to a guy because he begged me for it for 2 years.
Oh,
yeah,
and then
he gave it to somebody else, huh?
We're too late. I wish.
Yeah.
It's out there. It's out there. We'll find it. We'll find it.
Hey,
Scott,
I have a question. I have a question. When you were doing that, were you kind of playing into the whole "I got to have a gimmick" thing, or was this just an intimidation thing? Why did you come up with that walkout?
I wanted to be different. I wanted to be different, and that's kind of my personality, a little bit over the top.
Okay.
I got a couple of questions about Puerto Rico.
Hector Macho Camacho came out, and he had all the tassels and all that stuff, and I emulated him a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead, Miguel.
That's cool. I was just gonna. So Puerto Rico. So hotel weigh-ins, rule meeting. Did any of that? What was going on with some of that stuff? What are some of your memories there? Was it because that really is the Wild West kind of stuff? Now there's also like a little language barrier, and Puerto Rican fight fans. What must have been hanging around there must have been a lot of fun.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. This is all right. So we're at the hotel, and my memory goes to we're all going to go play golf. Okay. And I see this dude sitting over there in the corner, good looking guy. And I go up to him, "Hey man, what's your name?" "I'm Bruce Buffer." I go, "Really? Yeah. My brother's Michael Buffer." "Oh, that's cool. Yeah, let's get ready to rumble. Hey, we're going to go play golf. You want to come with?" "Yeah, I'll come with." So we all go to this absolutely beautiful beach that had a golf course on it. And this is a true story. He and everybody, we all jump in these golf carts and we're rolling down, playing golf, having a great time. On one of the holes, there was an empty golf cart. And we look to the right of us, and here comes this woman out of the water, just with no top on and only panties. And we're all just standing there looking, and she goes, "Hi, boys. You like my new tits?" Swear to God. Okay? We're all laughing and having a good time.
Seems like a setup.
We stick Bruce Buffer in her cart, right? So we're all finished playing golf. She comes back with us to the hotel, and so does Bruce Buffer. They're screaming and hollering because I'm late, of course, to the weigh-ins. And during the weigh-ins, I hear somebody talking about some announcer didn't show up. So I go to, I think, Art Davies, and I say, "Hey, listen, I know Michael Buffer's brother's here." "Really?" I said, "Yeah, he'll announce for us, I'm sure." And that's how Bruce Buffer got into the UFC.
No
When
way.
Michael Buffer got into the UFC.
No.
Bruce.
He's saying Michael no-showed.
No-showed.
No,
Okay.
it wasn't Michael that no-showed. It was
The other announcer.
some other announcer for the preliminaries. And
Gotcha.
that's how Bruce Buffer got his job.
Sweet.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was he doing down there to begin with? Do you know?
Just watching the fights. He was there to watch the fights.
Oh,
Yep.
cool.
Did he manage you? Did Bruce Buffer manage you?
Yeah, because then we had a relationship. Yeah, and I called him my manager and the whole bit. And he was a great guy. I love him to this day.
You know what I appreciate about the story? We love Bruce Buffer stories, Mike especially. And but what I appreciate about the stories, there was really no need to tell us about the tits to tell us that Bruce Buffer got the job. But It's perfect. It wouldn't be right without that. Thank you.
Dude, it was just like that movie Splash. She comes walking out of the ocean.
Wow.
The green is about 50, 60 feet from the sand, and she comes walking in. Hey, boys, how do you like my new tits?
Did you guys think she was a mermaid? She's got to be a mermaid.
Oh my God,
don't get her wet.
You couldn't ask for anything better. And I think Bruce wrote a chapter about that whole situation.
Oh, did he? Cool. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So was your manager while you were in the UFC? Am I correct?
Well, we became friends after that, and then for the next one, I said, "Hey, you want to be my manager?" And he goes, "Yeah." So that's kind of how that went.
Did you pay him a percentage?
No money was ever exchanged. Okay. No contract was ever done. It was just me and him, and a good handshake,
like a ceremonial.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, manager.
Yeah.
Let's kind of go back to Jerry Bohlander. So did you have like pre-fight jitters or big, under the big lights of the UFC going into that?
Well, I mean, you close the cage door in your first time, and all these people are screaming and booing you. Yeah, you got some pre-mark, yeah. But when the fight started, he didn't intimidate me at all. He was a great wrestler, and he did a hell of a job staying away from me. But the truth is that my wrestling took over, and not me kicking his ass with my fists. And that's kind of, as somebody that just got into that, I didn't look at it as and I remember I didn't look at it as, I'm mad at this guy and I'm going to freaking smash his face in. It was more of controlling him, tossing him around.
Different kind of fighting for you.
Yeah, it was. It wasn't a fight. It was more, yeah. So I'm sure the lights and everything got to me, and that's kind of how that went. I think that 2 or 3 fights down the road, it wouldn't have been like that.
So you hit him with 2 big throws, and one of which created like what would soon be a big hematoma on his forehead.
No, those were my headbutts.
Those are your headbutts, because when you cracked him, okay. Yeah, I know he landed on the mat head first.
Yeah, no, I was headbutting him, and at the end of the fight, I looked worse than he did.
Yeah. Yeah, you were a little rough. You also came in with nasal strips, which I'm surprised they allowed you to fight with.
Yeah, but I don't even know why they were on there, but that just thought it would help. Rather, they don't do nothing for you to begin with. Period.
Really? I thought it was kind of smart. I thought it was pretty cutting edge.
Yeah, no, I don't know. Yeah, they didn't do anything for me.
They came with the Lay's bag shirt.
Advertisement.
Hey, that thing cost me $1,200 back in the day.
Wow.
What did?
Yeah. That cape. I had a guy airbrush it the whole bit.
No. Wow. You're fucking serious, man.
Yeah. I thought come out there with something, be different.
So Scott, during the fight with Bohlander, you had mentioned you wore a wrestling singlet. Yeah. How tight was it when you were throwing Jerry around and he was busy trying to wrap it around your neck?
It really didn't. I couldn't get him loose off my neck. I remember that I just couldn't break loose from him. That's why the headbutts. That's why tossing him around. What I should have done was just start smashing his face with my fists, but I just didn't have that knowledge. The knowledge of using my hands. I was a wrestler, so that's what I was doing.
Scott, did you remember thinking in the middle of that fight, this singlet might be a mistake, I'll never wear this again? Do you remember thinking that?
No. I was just trying to dominate him and hoping that the punishment would either get the fight stopped or he'd quit.
So at UFC at the after party, everybody talks about how Tank Abbott got suspended for his actions afterward.
Yeah.
But nobody actually says what he did. Do you recall?
No. At the after party of UFC VIII?
Yes.
Puerto Rico?
Puerto Rico.
No, I don't remember what he did. I think that he got in some fight out in the crowd. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I think
Well,
that,
was that the Alan Goers incident?
yeah, I think that there was a fight in the crowd that he started. Well, his minions, all them little dudes that he hung out with.
Yeah, Paul Herrera and Eddie
and for me,
Ruiz.
I thought they're all one of those, they're all gay.
Eddie Ruiz was tough, man. That guy's as tough as nails.
Oh.
ADCC competitor.
No, but they Scott refers to those guys did have that kind of jail kind of like relationship, like
Oh
yeah, they all were like that.
So
you look at Eddie Ruiz and you've got to assume he did a few years in prison. Just looking at him. I mean, and that's not me like jumping to conclusions. I'd cross the street. That guy's walking down. I'm man, I don't want any issues. All right. So you lose to Jerry Bohlander. What are the talks like with the UFC after that fight? Because it was a pretty good showing, even though you didn't get your hand raised.
Well, and just let me tell you, at the end of that fight, being choked out like that, I was never in that situation before, and I panicked. Now, when I wrestle the guys and all that, being choked on, you don't panic. And I panicked, and that's kind of why I tapped out. I didn't understand what was going on or how to get out of it. And, that's how that fight ended. But afterwards, I remember, it was a good time. The after party was a good time. And, we laughed about it. And I was all purple and bruised up on my neck pretty bad. And I had welts all over the front of my head. I remember that from headbutting him, and he didn't look worse for the wear, but we had a good talk and a good time afterwards. We had a lot of fun, and there was no animosity. There was no, nothing. It was just a good time.
Bohlander was a kid.
Yeah, he was. I speak to Bohlander, every few months on Facebook.
That's cool.
So,
Nice.
Yeah, we're still in touch. Yeah, we're still in touch.
So after that fight, did you say, okay, I got to start learning how to do this sport a little bit better? Do I have to start doing training, jiu-jitsu, stuff like that to stop the chokes? Did you go to a different place, or how'd that go?
So after that, I knew that I wasn't done with the UFC. That's when I contacted Don Frye. And Frye,
before we go to Don Frye, you contact Don Frye, but you have Greg Nelson right down the street. Mario Roberto is in Minnesota at this time.
See, I don't know any of those guys. Didn't know any of those guys.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
There was more, there wasn't any fighting in Minnesota going on. There was nothing like that going on here. We trained at a regular gym, pulled out a mat, and, that's how we trained.
I mean, Dave Menne was there. I mean, there was.
Oh yeah. Only afterwards did we, I learned of Dave Menne, all these guys here. And the reason I started to know these guys is because we threw after the UFC and, during the 90s, the late 90s, we had a place that we threw a fight about every month and a half. And Dave Menne was one of the fighters. And I tell you, do we want to hear a story about Dave Menne? I'll tell you one.
Please.
I got one.
Of course. Yeah.
So we threw a fight at, what's the name of that bar that's up there? Well, anyways, and his fighter didn't show up, and so there was another guy there that comes and says, "Yeah, my guy will fight." And Dave says, "Okay, let's go." Now this guy you would never think, but he looks like he was in shape. He beat the shit out of Dave Menne. I mean, absolutely. To where I was telling the frickin' Menne's trainer, throw the towel. And I'm yelling at him, throw the towel. And Menne hears me and goes, don't you fucking throw the towel. And he is getting his ass handed to him by a guy that I've never seen, nobody knew about. And it was just like one of the extra guys that came in with a fighter. At the end of this fight, we take Dave Menne in the back, and I'm talking to him, and I go, man, that was absolutely, I mean, he took a beating and never gave up. And I said, well, no, he did not. He freaking got his ass kicked. And I go, well, we're getting an ambulance because we're taking you to the hospital. Oh, no. He fought all the way. And then I said, no, we're taking you to the hospital right now because he was jacked up. And we talk about, once in a while when I see him, we talk about that fight and how tough Menne really, really is. And you never got to see that in the UFC. You never got to see, his absolute grind it out. And that, he was he's probably one of the most impressive besides Oleg Taktarov. I saw Oleg get a good beating.
Yeah.
Menne probably got the biggest beating I've ever seen in mixed martial arts fight.
Do you remember who the guy was? Whatever happened to him? Why did he never fight again?
I don't. And that was the only fight that guy ever had that we ever knew about.
Wow.
But he was absolutely phenomenal.
Did you ever do co-promote with Brad Kohler?
Yeah. See, that's who we threw the fight with. Was Kohler.
I'm sure that went well.
No, but nobody got paid.
Me and Kohler had a relationship for a long time, and then he did something to me, and I said, "You know what? I'm driving right now, and I'm going to come to kick your ass." Sure enough, he was at his school, and I drive up there and fricking, let's go. He comes out, and about 30 of his guys come out, and it's just me standing there. I said, "Let's go right now," and so one of his guys kind of talked him down, and. That was kind of the end of our Kohler and my relationship, but we have a relationship that are, friendly now, but.
Was it money related?
Well, you know the stories. I don't have to tell you about that. You know the stories.
No, we don't know.
What?
You know the stories. Kohler. All right. Hey, Kohler's octagons were free to him. That's all I could tell you. If you know what I mean.
Yeah. I ain't touching it. So UFC 11, you obviously have a really good showing in Puerto Rico at UFC 8. They bring you back September 20th, 1996, and you're in a tournament. Another tournament, and it's Sam Fulton is your first victim. But the thing with this fight is I can find little clips of it on your future fights, but it's nowhere to be found. I've tried to find your fight with Sam Fulton at least 45 minutes. And I couldn't do it.
Yeah, it's out there. Fulton fight, John McCarthy didn't like him at all because that guy was talking so much crap. He was always going to kick my ass at none of these guys. He talked a lot of crap, and McCarthy didn't like him at all. Just didn't like him. And, when we fought, I felt, and as you can see, I heard him, and I dropped a knee on him, and, I look at McCarthy and I go, what do you want me to do? Kill him? And McCarthy goes, keep fighting. And I dropped one more knee down on his head, and I just got up, and it was over after that.
So Sam starts with like a spinning elbow, the little footage that I could find.
Yeah.
And he kind of falls. It's not like a traditional wrestling takedown.
Yeah.
Scott jumps on him with a knee, in order to try to crush his head.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. MTV was there. So he did an interview with MTV about, he's the world PKA something kind of champion, and he's going to just come out there and destroy me. But McCarthy didn't like him at all, and he just let me continue punishing him.
So this is an alternate fight. He's not in the actual tournament. So let me kind of phrase that properly. So after the fight's over, the referee gets in, and you push the referee. It's almost as if you weren't done.
Yeah, I it's kind of hard to remember. I kind of remember that, but no, it was that, I looked up at McCarthy and go, what do you want me to do? Kill him? I did say that to him.
I'm not sure it was McCarthy as the referee. I'd have to look again. I saw a tiny clip of it.
Yeah, probably knows.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was. And you know what?
It showed you had a bad attitude, though, for sure.
Funny thing is that years and years later, I get a phone call. Hey, this is Sam Fulton. I go, really? Hey, how you doing? We're talking. Hey, I live down the block from you. Literally. Wow. Yeah. So his job and he started to be some kind of a preacher, really heavily involved in the church. And we met each other and had a great time. And it wasn't it was awesome sitting down talking to him and having a lot, talking about the fight and reminiscing. And so he was in Minnesota for a few years. And then, of course, when the church was done with him, whatever, he moved away. And about, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, it was his birthday, and his daughters reached out to me. And so I shot him a small video about,
Nice.
remember our time. And yeah, he's got a couple beautiful daughters and a couple beautiful son-in-laws. And
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
So Jerry Bohlander can't continue in his tournament, and you wind up against Tank Abbott in the quarterfinals. So
Yep.
you went from alternate to into the tournament, and there was absolutely no fear. Like, it was, Tank Abbott was a pretty big, intimidating, imposing figure where most people would, be hesitant on taking it, where you seem like, man, this is your dream fight. Like, you couldn't wait for that competition.
Well, I tell you, so after the alternate fight and the fight's going on, I actually get up and leave and go back in the back while Bohlander was fighting. And I knew from that day I was going to fight Tank. And I don't know how I knew it. I just knew it. And I'm in the back warming up because I know that I'm going to fight Tank. Merlitz comes walking in with a whole bunch of other guys. Okay, you're in. You want to fight Tank? I go, I'm getting back here. I'm ready to fight right now. And that's kind of how that went. I knew for that day that that's what I was going to be. And fighting Tank was really the only reason why I got into the UFC. Is the only reason why I wanted to get in the UFC was to fight Tank. And that's the honest to God truth. And I knew that day I was going to fight him.
Okay, so go ahead.
I was just going to ask, so you mentioned how Bohlander and how some of these, they didn't get you charged up like a real fight. I bet Tank got under your skin a little bit then.
I didn't like Tank. Tank was a bully. And I didn't like him. I didn't like the freaking crew that he walked around with. They were all just I didn't like them.
So did you watch him beat up somebody on UFC and say, I didn't like him, and then you met him and continued to not like him?
No, I saw him beating up on some people in the crowd. That's kind of what, and that's kind of really what started that whole thing with Tank and me wanting to get in there and fight him.
Were you afraid of his power?
Nothing. No, I wasn't afraid of him at all. In fact, here's the story. Fucking cronies, right? And guy walks up to me and sticks a mic in my face. What do you think you're going to do? You're going to fight Tank Abbott now. And I look at Don Frye and I go, who is this guy and why is he in my face right now? I turn around and I look at Tank Abbott while he's all standing there and I go, and I point at him, now you're going to fight somebody who's not afraid of you. And of course, he looks at me and then all his cronies start, screaming and hollering at me. And I turn around and it turns around and I go, why is this guy standing here? And it turns out to be Joe Rogan. I had no clue who Joe Rogan was. And he's trying to talk to me before I go out and fight Tank Abbott.
Yeah, no one did at that time.
When I see Joe, we have a good laugh about it and talk about that whole situation. Because I look at Don and go, why is this guy in my face? But yeah, so that's kind of how it is. But I knew that night that I was going to fight Tank, and I was ready for it.
Well, I think one of the turning points was at the 3-minute mark. You landed a couple like calf kicks, and it showed Tank's entire stance and his power just dwindled after that. And it seemed like his strategy changed. Like, rather than trying to combat you like a bull heading up, he was more content on grabbing the fence and trying to control you.
Well, I think because I was talking to him the whole fight.
You guys were talking a lot of trash.
Yeah. I was. And I just think, but let me tell you something though. I hit Tank with an uppercut and you can see it. I mean, I stood that kid up and I hit him and I go, okay, I got him. Thinking in my head. And, all of a sudden, boom, he came back and I go, oh man, this is going to be a long fight. Wow. I remember thinking about that. And then he threw me into the fence and, I told him he hits like a girl. And but he, at no point at any time during that fight did I ever feel that he hit me hard enough or that he could hit me hard enough. And, I wasn't intimidated at all, but just
So the
because I didn't like the guy, and that was the first fight that I got in that I wanted to fight the guy. I was mad at him. I didn't like him.
So the people at home, like if you hadn't seen the fight, in essence, they're standing up. Tank is grabbing both hands into the cage, kind of just creating a stalemate between the two, except Scott isn't allowing that. Like, he's landing the occasional knee, the occasional uppercut, to where you've got one guy just burning tons and tons of energy, keeping a stall, while the other guy is doing dirty boxing inside without any real fear of getting hit. It was a really dumb strategy on Tank Abbott's part.
Well, I think that Tank finally found somebody that wasn't
afraid of him. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's and he just didn't know how to, it's just your typical bully.
Yeah.
Stand up to the bully. They don't know what to do. And that's kind of how that fight went.
It's interesting. Art Davey told us a story about meeting Tank and going with Tank out to, much like you said, you fought in front of 300 other people, like with the kid and the 6'5" guy comes out. Tank fought in those exact same circumstances out in the desert or wherever it was too. Did you sense that rivalry? Is it like this was more than just like wrestling competition? This was street cred. Did you look at it that way?
I just thought he was a bully.
Okay.
And all, I wasn't a bully, even though that I was tough and I fought. I never, ever, if I smacked the guy and we got in a fight, he goes down, it's over for me. If the other guy starts, is starting to bleed, it's over. I never, ever pushed the envelope. I never hit anybody when they were down. I never kicked anybody. I never did any of that stuff. I wasn't a bully. Although, because of my reputation of being the toughest guy, toughest high school kid around, that guys wanted to challenge me all the time. And that's just kind of going to Hyde Park. That's kind of how it went. Mm-hmm. When I played football, it was more that I wanted to intimidate every single person on that field. And, I remember like it was yesterday, we had one of our defensive tackles was, like he was on roller skates, just getting his ass kicked. And the coach started screaming at me, get to the, go to the right side, go to the right side. And, so we switched sides. And I remember that guy saying, "Oh, another fat fucker I can beat on." Well, that guy said after the second play, this is no lie, he apologized to me. He says, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean that." And I had a couple words.
We'd be friends.
Huh?
All right.
That's cool.
So the one thing about the tournament is that Mark Coleman didn't have anybody to fight in the finals.
Right.
So it was an 8-man tournament, but because the locker room was completely empty and no one would fight him, he was crowned the champion, even though he only had fought twice. The thing is, Big John McCarthy was real quick to stand people up. He was real quick to break, fighters up that were actually, going for different positions. And, it's real easy now to say, well, Big John was doing this or that, but the sport was still developing. Right. So you really can't hammer Big John for that. But Tank stalled with the cage grabbing for about 7, 8 minutes.
Yeah.
And I think had he not done that, I believe Mark Coleman would have had a fight in the finals. I think if Big John would not have allowed Tank to just eat that much time off of the clock, I think there could have been a complete UFC 11 tournament.
I listen, Coleman would have kicked my ass. There's no question. He was a phenomenal wrestler. He threw strikes when he was on top. There was no question. But I wasn't afraid of it. The only thing is that we're in the back after the fight. You can't hold the cage anymore. He was stalling, and I had thoughts after that they didn't want Tank to lose, and that was
that's for sure.
Yeah, they didn't want him to lose, and so there were some things that were allowed that would not be allowed normally in another fight that same day or previous.
You couldn't be more correct. In fact, I think the tables were tilted against Mark Coleman at the time behind the scenes, and they were absolutely tilted for Tank Abbott. I can't agree more.
Oh, no, 100%. We all got that feeling And yeah, there was Tank was their baby, completely their baby, and they want to develop. They wanted, that was the face of the UFC, some jerk off bully.
Man, I'm glad they don't tell things like that anymore.
No.
Yeah.
That's a joke.
The other part of it is on a historical basis. This was literally one of the straws that broke the camel's back on the 8-man tournaments. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like if they can't finish him, and with all due respect, nobody nowadays would continue under those circumstances. You know what I mean? You just really literally can't ask, especially 300 pounders, to put out 15 minutes and then come back and do it again. It's very hard to sustain those tournaments. So they learned a lesson. But my main question to you is at some point, did you feel love from them? You said Tank was their baby, but like you came back. I'll let Mike take us back.
Yeah, I mean, you had a pretty good showing against Tank, but I mean, there's Miguel. I mean, and
go, Mike.
We'll get back to that if you don't mind. You had a corner woman in Becky Levi. What was your relationship with her?
Well, Don Frye turned me on to her. So Don Frye said that she can get you ready with your cardio. And so that's what she did. I went from a 13-minute mile down to an 8-minute mile.
Woo.
And yeah, she did a hell of a job. And Becky Levi, to this day, I love her. I can't remember, Illinois. I was somewhere, and I walk in because I used to sell cars on the roads, go to all these big super sales where we send out 200,000 mailers and we'd sell 700-800 cars in 5 days. And so, but I went to the gym everywhere I go, and I walked in there, and sure enough, she's the athletic director for the whole gym, and we met up, and it was great seeing her again. But yeah, that's kind of how it went with Becky. She was my conditioning coach. She ran me, she put me in the pool, she did lots of things to get me ready for that fight.
Did you ever scare you? Did she scare you? Because she could be scary.
Dude, she's a beast. She's a beast, man. And she doesn't look a day different from what she did back then.
Some would refer to her as Dan Severn's bag woman, but
oh, we don't want to get into that now. Come on.
Yeah, we won't talk about Dan's
somebody else called her Brock Lesnar, the early version.
She was tough as nails.
Yeah.
I agree.
I heard that she fought a man, beat him, and he was so mad about it that she fought him again that same night, and he beat him again.
That was in Indiana. That was in like Fort Wayne, Indiana. That is correct.
Yeah, that's exactly where she still is too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she's still in Fort Wayne.
So this is kind of where Hollywood Ferrozzo comes out. December 7th, 1996, Ultimate 2. You know exactly where I'm going with this, Scott.
Yeah.
After the Tank Abbott Steve Nelmark fight, Bruce Beck, it's so bizarre the way he's talking to you. Like you do an interview with Bruce Beck. Let's hear your version, and then we'll do our breakdown afterward.
So I knew that they were going to interview me, and I'm going to give you a little inside of the back. So we talked about what he was going to do, kind of pushing on me and talking, and so it was just all a good time, and it was for show. It was for it was for
weird.
show. Yeah, no, it was for show, and it was good. And then we talked about my glasses before we ever started doing the interview. He goes, "Yeah, where are the glasses? This is going to be classic." So that's kind of how that went.
Scott's got his sunglasses on.
I don't know. Hey, hold on. I'm the first to coin those words. Those words were never spoken before I said them.
What was it? What'd you say?
These ain't sunglasses. This is eyewear.
Yeah, this is eyewear. Right. So, in essence, Ferrozzo, all the way from Minnesota, is doing like his best Miami Vice impersonation with Bruce. And Bruce is like the annoying reporter. Oh, so you think you can beat this guy, huh? Oh, what about that guy? And Ferrozzo is very quick on the comebacks. And at some point, it gets a little physical where you touch Bruce. Bruce, you keep talking to me this way. I'm going to rip your shirt off.
Yeah.
You became Hollywood.
Yeah.
At that point, it seemed as if they were starting to build you, though. Would you agree?
Well, I think that Tank was still their man. Truth is, Tank was still their man. They didn't want to pay me to come back. It was very, I think they paid me $15,000 to fight again after that.
Okay.
But
well, you were claiming that there was sexism because you only liked the pretty boys, and man like yourself was getting discriminated against.
Yeah. But a lot of that was just a lot of fun. We were talking just fun. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
But Tank was still their guy. He was important to them. They had that feeling,
All right. So this is where the interview is going to pick up a little bit. So, Scott, you're in New York. You're ready to fight UFC 12. And while up there, you guys get the call at weigh-ins that the fight is no longer taking place in that city.
Yeah.
And you guys have to fly to Dothan, Alabama.
Yeah.
Why don't you walk us through that process, how you found out, the transportation of which, how it affected your fight, all of that.
So we're all sitting in there. They all bring us into a big room and said, we're no longer fighting in New York. New York doesn't want us to fight.
Was this the day before the event, or when did the conversation take place?
This was that day. This was that day. We're hours away from putting this thing together.
Okay, so there was flights that took off the night before, so you were the morning flight.
Yeah.
Wow.
And back then, you could get. So I'm going to tell you a story. So they're telling us that we're leaving and pack up, and we're moving the fight. So we're all thinking, oh, well, wow, we can't fight in New York. So we're all sitting around at this airport, and this is a true story. There's about 5 or 6 people that came to see me fight. And they go, oh, man, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? How are we going to get down there? And I go, watch this. I went to I think it was McCarthy's wife. And I said, my cousins are here, and we're taking them with us. And 5 fans got to go to Dothan, Alabama on the flight with us.
Wow.
And so I took them, and here's what was really, really weird. One of them was one of those people was a reporter, but they were all just fans, but he actually worked for World News Report. Mm-hmm. Remember that? And they wrote a story about how I took them on the flight with us, and acted like they were family and the whole bit.
That's super cool.
I can remember sitting across from Coleman. We're all in the airport just waiting to go, and looking at that guy. I said, "That guy's a freaking beast." I remember that. Yeah,
Coleman's not. I imagine Coleman had his game face on and pacing around the airport
the whole time. Yeah, the whole time. He had his girlfriend with him. I don't know if it's his wife now, but he had his girlfriend with him, and kind of was quiet on his own. But I'm just thinking, this guy's a freaking beast.
Yeah. So you fly out there. How did it affect you at all?
Oh yeah, we didn't sleep.
How was the UFC staff? I could only imagine the type of stress that they were under, because man, that's the MVP that night. The UFC staff pulling that thing off.
Oh, it was incredible what they did in a matter of hours, from knowing that you can't fight to chartering planes, to getting hotels set up, to getting food, to getting everything that they did was absolutely, that's big money. That's big money there that put that together and move that fight that way, that quick. But he can't sleep on the plane. You can't, when you get to the hotel, you're fighting that night. It was tiring up until game time.
You were in coach on that plane? You're in coach?
All the seats were the same.
Oh, okay.
I think it was a private plane.
There was two. Oh, okay. There was 2 planes. Yeah, there was 2 planes with hundreds of people on them.
So Miguel, they actually had a 3rd plane where they flew the cage down.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah, that's how bonkers.
I will say, Scott mentioned her, and at that time, Elaine McCarthy, Big John's wife, basically ran all the logistics of the show, like all of that stuff, including to make sure that I guess that that Art Davie had the checks to hand out and stuff.
That's
but
incredible.
She did everything, like in terms of flights and all the little geeks that got their press passes and stuff. She was the person that did all that, and really until they blew up with Zuffa, she ran the show behind the scenes.
So February 7th, 1997, Dothan, Alabama, UFC 12. Your first opponent is Jim Mullen. He is somebody that's touted as having a 15-1 kickboxing record. Pretty tough guy, decent striking. And, weighed 215. You were 336 at this time, weight-wise.
Yeah.
What can you recall about that fight?
Okay, so again, like my memory, fades in and fades out. It's unfortunate, but that's the gentleman that I was thinking about. So he was the one that was talking smack the whole time. Him and his brother were there. And that's the guy that got on MTV and talked about, how the UFC, what the UFC was, and there's no possible way. And that guy, that's the guy that McCarthy didn't like.
Okay. Well, McCarthy was definitely the referee.
That's the guy. McCarthy did not like him, and all the crap that he was talking about, how he's going to kick my ass. And I went out there and punished that guy real quick. But his brother came to me, and it wasn't during warmups. It was during where we're all just sitting around, kind of out there looking at the cage, and kind of his brother comes up to me and goes, can you make sure you don't hurt my brother? And I looked at him. And go, I won't hurt your brother. That's what I said to him. And it kind of dawned on me at that point in time that all the crap that guy was talking, he was really afraid. That's what came to my mind. I'll never forget it. Him coming up to me and saying that to me.
So that was the debut of your Pitbull on top of the world tattoo as well.
Yeah. I cried like a baby when I got that though.
So Chris, his
Check
second
out the full
fight
interview on
is
iTunes,
the UFC
Spotify,
debut
and all major podcast
against a man
platforms.
known as Vitor Belfort at the time.
Yep.
Vitor Belfort.
I've heard of that guy.
Yeah. What were your thoughts? Before, during, and after. It's a quick one.
So my thoughts was on that fight. I can remember Longstreet coming in the back and go, "You need to stay away from that guy." That's all he said to me. That's all he said to me. You need to stay away from that guy. So he came across the ring and we went at it. And at no point in time did I ever feel out of control or hurt. I think, we went to the ground, and this is how I remember it. So Longstreet and Frye was the one, would get on my back and start pounding me with gloves on, of course, and hitting me and elbowing my head and really taking control. And I was protecting myself. I was fine. I didn't feel anything that was hurting me. And when we went to the ground and that happened, I felt a little pressure come off of me. I got up, threw him into the fence, and the next thing I knew, the fight was over. And I didn't understand why.
Well, you were still going for a takedown too. Like you weren't finished yet. And there almost was a fight in the cage between his team and yourself. Like it got heated quick.
Well, because I didn't understand why they would stop the fight. In no way did I tap. No way did I didn't quit. I was getting hit from behind, but I trained in that position before. I trained with somebody in back of me, hitting my head, hitting my body. And I just felt, when I felt that pressure come off, I turned around, threw him into the fence. And, that's McCarthy was already there, grabbing a hold of me, pushing me back. And they thought that I was trying to fight him after the bell, but I didn't realize the bell had happened. I didn't realize the fight was being stopped.
That's your last UFC fight.
Yep.
Was there any talks about renewing your contract at all?
I had a very successful career. I had a child at home. It didn't. I did what the truth is. I did what I came to do. I came there to beat Tank Abbott. And that's really all, and that's the truth. That's really all I ever really wanted to do there. Yeah, it was fun coming back in there. And, I was one of the guys that got to fight Vitor, but all that really didn't matter to me. What mattered to me is that I beat Tank Abbott and, the bully of the UFC.
Well, Chris, it doesn't end there. Like you would think, oh, okay, his UFC career doesn't fight again. Okay, it's over. Negatory. There's a backyard fight in the middle of Ohio by promoter Brian Grooms.
Yes.
It is the first time that seasonal allergies may have come into play in regards to affecting one's performance. How does you and Tank Abbott backyard fight? I got some notes on it. I'd rather hear from you first. How does this come about? Because it's amazing.
Well, so I get contacted by this guy, Brian Grooms, and he says, hey, man, I want to put on this fight. I want to do it on pay-per-view. I want you and Tank on there. And in the meantime, we're having some interviews, and people know that, I'm calling Tank a fag and the whole bit. And Brian Grooms talks to me and says, hey, listen, you want to fight? And I go, yeah. The issue was, though, that I was out in the grass mowing the lawn one day, about 60 days beforehand. And I come back in and my toes got a little pressure on it. I feel something on there. And I go, oh, wow, what's that? What's that? Didn't think nothing of it. Well, 2 weeks later, I'm in the hospital fighting for my life. I caught a staph infection out there in the grass somewhere, and they had to amputate part of my foot.
Did you have your shoe on or off?
I had sandals on, but it didn't stub it or nothing. It was just something in the grass. Must have got into a cut, something in my foot. I go to the hospital. They misdiagnose me. They send me out. Home. I go with this foot doctor. The guy walks in the door, and the expression on his face absolutely sunk me, because he looks at me and goes, well, you don't have gout. I got to open you up right here, right now. And of course, he opens my foot, debriefs it. I go to the hospital, and all of a sudden there was a strike with the nurses, so a lot of communication wasn't going on. They take my culture, they put it on the shelf, they leave it there. They're filling me up with antibiotics that's not working. I almost lose my life. The doc comes in and goes, well, I'm going to do everything I can to save your life right now, but I'm going to have to take you from your knee down, and we're just going to amputate your leg. And instantly I said, okay, fine, do whatever you need to do. But this doctor, Dr. Rupt, was a fan of mine, and he knew what that would do to me. So he literally spent 10 hours, 9 hours in the operating room, taking every piece of my foot that he could and saving it. And the first time that he came in to change my bandage, it was like a 2.5 hour bandage change. And he did a tremendous job. It took a long time to heal. And I get this phone call from Brian Grooms, and I'm still, my foot's still kind of going through it. And I just had gastric bypass. So I have these staple, and I'm 30 days out. He goes, do you want to fight?
How old are you at this point?
I don't know. It's been, it's probably been 10. So I'm in my early 40s.
Okay.
And I go, he goes, you want to fight Tank? And I go, yeah, I want to fight Tank. Absolutely. And I got these staples in my stomach still. So my foot, I can't really train because my foot is not perfect anymore. I got these staples in my stomach, and, I do the training the best I can to fight Tank. So we go out there, and everything was set up. They were going to put it on pay-per-view. We had the auditorium. The other fights were going to happen. Everything was good. And the boxing commission got a hold of Brian Grooms and said, if you throw a fight,
so Bernie Bravado,
whoever, and goes, you throw a fight, you guys are going to jail. So we didn't know what to do. And I said, well, let's just go fight in the backyard somewhere. And that's how that started. So,
all right. So Wes Sims, obviously close personal friend of mine, he was telling me, come on up, dude. Ferrozzo and Tank, they're fighting in the backyard. They're fighting like at a bar. So it was like an abandoned bar.
Yeah.
Somebody posted it online. The athletic commission stepped in, all sorts of threats. So the promoter goes, okay, well, we're going to have to tighten the circle up a little bit. we're not going to listen to the state of Ohio, and we're going to move it to a strip mall. At the strip mall, word got out again. Athletic Commission once again comes in. And at that point, Sims actually is really close friends with Brian Grooms, who's the promoter. He wouldn't tell anybody. It was only like family. And like, if you watch the video, it's online, it's on YouTube. The neighbors are peeking over the fence watching two grown men fight.
Yeah.
Like they fought on leaves. There's a dog barking. I think for several minutes, Tank is it's old school UFC, 1 10-minute round, 3-minute overtime. You go to your stomach in order to prevent like a pin, like a traditional wrestling move. Tank pounds on you for about 7 minutes, and every single time you're telling him it doesn't hurt. You can't hurt me. It doesn't hurt. And
well, so here's the night before we fight. We sit down and bullshit with each other for about 2 hours. Literally, me, him, 4 other people, and his dad.
Wow.
And we're talking, and we're really just kind of getting involved and talking, and about times and the whole bit, and we're getting along, and I'm actually starting to like Tank. But remember, we're old now. And after we sat and bullshitted and talked, and the whole bit, his dad came up to me, true story, and goes, "No one's gonna get hurt, right?" And I go, "Yeah, nobody's gonna get hurt." So we fight in the back. Now you see a lot of that's cut out because Tank quit on me twice, and
there was some editing.
There was Brian Grooms paid me a lot of money, a lot.
Can we ask what he paid with the price?
$25,000. Yeah.
Wow. How did he? Was he just a big fan and he wanted to do this because he couldn't have recouped any of that money? Why did he do this?
I have no clue, but he paid me. I walked out of there with 25 grand, and I was thinking to myself, so we're fighting, boom, boom, and within 45 or 50 seconds, Tank bends over and quits. And just before he lets his hand up, I'm about to kick him in his face. And then his dad's voice came into my mind. "Nobody's going to get hurt, right?" And I said, "No." So I backed off and I looked at Brian. I said, no, we'll give him a minute to recover. So we did. We gave him a minute to recover, and he got back up, and then we went at it again.
All right. So Grooms initially wanted to charge $1 a pay-per-view, just $1.
Yeah.
And then he got talked into because of all the service charges and fees and stuff like that. It was $10. And somebody from Europe hacked it and let everybody see it for free. And Grooms had already had people lined up. He wanted McCorkle Sims. I was on the message boards at that time asking for Fang Maturi. It's funny that you mentioned him earlier. And his entire intent was essentially to do what Street Beefs is doing, on the East Coast, except he was going to charge $1 or $2 for it. And you know what? Like Kimbo in the backyard stuff, this is really kind of prior to that, or right around the same time, I should say, probably would have worked out pretty well for him had he continued.
Yeah. Brian Grooms to this day, that's who bought my cape.
Oh, are you serious?
Yeah. And unfortunately, I went to go get the cape back from him because I told him that it was just basically, you can buy it from me, but don't ever sell it. And unfortunately, he must have gotten the rough times and had to sell it. And it's out there, and I've heard it's out there, and somebody has it. And if you find it, call me up because I'd really appreciate it, and I'll pay whatever it is to get the thing back.
Yeah. I will counter that with equaling what Scott will pay so I can have it. Just so just put it out there as well.
Yeah.
But anyways,
all
right. So the Minnesota scene, did you ever work out with Brock Lesnar?
No, but I had a conversation with Brock. I told Brock that, listen, I think that you could be the first person that kills somebody in the ring. And
did that make you jealous?
No, the problem. And then I said to him, the problem is that you got too many yes guys around you. Yeah, you look great. Yeah, I said, you need to get to a fighter house. You need to really start to get that eye of the tiger. Because Brock has a lot of money. He's up in Alexandria. He's got a big training facility up there. And, of course, he never listened to me.
Yeah.
We had heard that about Brock. He brought guys in that, would play second horse, to his lead. And anytime somebody tried to pull ahead and try to show him something, they quickly found their way out the door.
Yeah, no, it was, and that's the issue. And that's why I think that, as an entertainer, Brock on wrestling, he's very good. But the fight game is real. It's not a dance. And, you have to have some type of people telling you, hey, this is what you need to do. This is how it goes. And Brock was tough, but I think that there was so much more potential for Lesnar in the UFC than he ever reached.
Yeah, Brock is definitely, Ivan Drago in Rocky, where he's in the nice facility, all this stuff. He need to get back with like picking up the rocks and run through snow like like Rocky was. You know what I mean? He had all this stuff, but I mean, he just the most probably talented as far as biggest, strongest, athletic guy we've ever seen in there. But he was a bully, and to me, and he's not tough. I mean, he gets hit, he folds. I mean, he's origami. Dude, the dude's not the mentality of a fighter. He's a great wrestler, and he's a physical specimen, but he's not a great fighter. Never has been. He just doesn't like to get great hammer, terrible nail.
Okay, wait, Chris. What about pre-disease?
No, same thing. He's still
same thing.
When he gets hit, think about it. Whenever he got hit,
maybe I'm just a
somebody
fanboy.
stood up to him, he folded. I mean, if anybody, he's just like what Scott talked about. He's a typical bully, and what I always say, he's the best hammer you're going to find, the worst nail. You hit him a couple of times, he folds up.
Okay, so
I have a photo of Brock Lesnar, 1999 at SummerSlam, which I was invited to by the McMahons to go. And there's a photo, and nobody really realized that Brock was standing back there, but Brock was about 180 pounds. This was long before, and I have that photo because the game took pictures with my son, and Brock was standing behind him, but he wasn't very big at all, not at all. So I don't.
Man, he must have had a growth spurt, probably very natural.
Sure,
whatever he had, whatever he
start taking
had,
some protein mixed with creatine.
That muscle milk.
Some from GNC.
Scott.
Yeah, because he was not a very big guy then.
So Wes Sims is demanded I ask you a question. Let's talk about post-singlet. Scott Ferrozzo. I'm not saying you were on any supplements, but let's just say that they may have been on the table. Do you think you could have beat Rickson Gracie?
Yeah, no, none of those guys. I was not.
Dude, he's begging me to tell you to say yes. He actually told me to talk to you and tell you to say yes before we recorded.
Yeah, no, those guys were so much more talented. Listen, if it was a slugfest, yeah, because you're not going to be able to hit me and hurt me, But when you take me to the ground, those guys, man, they can pull shit out of their ass.
Oh, dude, come on. The freaking Gracie family. I mean, you got this Amazon jungle full of savages, and they're the kings. I mean, think about that.
Yeah. Scott,
it's funny. So Coleman came up to one of our fights that we fought with Brad Kohler. He brought some fighters up, and we jump in the ring together, and the crowd goes freaking nuts. Crowd goes nuts. We act like we're going to get it on, acted like we're screaming at each other, yelling at each other. And that was a good time. But I tell you what, all those guys, Coleman, all those guys, man, they I looked up to them. They were the real deals. Me, I was just a guy that, could fight. The fight came probably, I think that if the game came back when I was in my 20s, it would have been a whole nother story. Because at that time, I mean, literally, I don't care if you were walking around with your girlfriend or your mother, you looked at me wrong, I'm kicking your ass. But when you get that football mentality, and like a light switch went off when my football career was done, I was never that way ever again. Ever. Never. I was very passive. I never And it was only until I saw the fights at my friend's house that I said, yeah, I could do that.
So, Scott, I have a question for you. Back when you were fighting, even when I started fighting, it was a different element, different animal. It was really raw fight. It was, headbutts, what you're talking about. Now they've changed the sport. They've made it safer. Do you like it better the way it is now, or do you like the old school Vale Tudo NHB rules? We would say no holds barred as opposed to the MMA. What do you find better or more entertaining?
Well, more entertaining, old school, because it was more violent. It was more, get your ass kicked. Now, these guys are stand-up fighters, kicks, they go to the ground. It's much more, I want to say it's much more easier. You got two athletes that are pretty much equal.
Yeah.
And back in the day,
He knows
we
what you
fighters
know.
in that didn't know anything and just got it on. I mean, I still remember that big guy in UFC 1 or 2 falling on his face and getting a kick to the mouth. He had no mouth guard in or something and lost 4 or 5 of his teeth.
Yeah.
Those were the kind of things, but that's the era I grew up in. Wow. I said many, when we first started doing this, when the interview with MTV, I said the fighter that fights today is not going to be able to fight the guy that's going to fight years from now.
No,
which is true.
Well, I think it's a different sport. I mean, not just in the rule set, but even the competitors. Like the competitors in the early UFCs, are they as skilled as the guys today? Of course not. Absolutely, like without question, not. But the durability, ruggedness, hardness, just the grimy grit that you get from fighters of your era, which is my favorite era. Guys today, they would fold like a chair going against any of that, no matter how much skill, how much training. You run into that hardness with some basic jiu-jitsu defense. That old school cat is going to take your lunch.
Yeah, and that's but don't get me wrong. I'm glad these guys are making money. I'm glad they can make a career out of it. Because my friend Don Frye is not. He took some beatings. He wrestled. I mean, and he's not. I mean, I talked to him yesterday. He's not the same guy, even close. He's in pain every day. He's got to walk with a big brace on. All these guys, Coleman, all them, Tank. I mean, almost losing his life. I talked to him. All these guys. I've been fortunate that I've relatively stayed in the gym. I've worked out. I'm healthy. I don't have any issues. But I feel like for Don Frye, which is like my brother, is that the stuff that he goes through now and the amount of beating that his body took, that I'm glad that all these guys are making the money and hopefully they're smart with it.
I was really wishing like the UFC would kind of go out and do something for the people who kind of helped build the sport. The old school guys who didn't make the kind of money, you would think there'd be some kind of a pension thing they could do. Like if you fought in the UFC 5 times, you get this. If you fought there 20 times, you get this. Something just to, I hate seeing people who really can't do anything anymore, trying to find ways to make money. I don't get why something like that's not done. Kind of bothers me.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. This is the issue here. I can go to Dana White, call him on the phone. He absolutely, in my view, loves the old fighters.
He does.
Love them.
Oh, for sure.
Okay. I call him up. I want tickets to a fight. Yeah. Where you got? Call my girl, take care of you, bring you in, put you on the floor. I mean, so he has that respect, and I'm not sure. I hear a lot of stuff that, how he negotiates with fighters and all that. You got a lot of egos going around. You got a lot of people that think that they're better than they are, or the draw. And this is a business that they run. They run to get people in front of the TV set. They want to get paid. They want, they put on a good show. But if you don't bring what they need to the screen, they don't need you.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I
That's for
agree.
sure.
I agree. I just like to see the people who built this thing up to where it is now, who didn't ever get their due. If you have opportunity right now, that's all up to you. I mean, you have the opportunity now that people in the past did not. I would just like to see them get taken care of a little bit better. All right.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, I always dreamt of myself being fighter relations for the UFC. So Dana,
Pay
Dude, I
attention.
got a call.
Wake up. So
So Scott, dude, thank you so much. The Pitbull, Scott Ferrozzo, everybody. Scott, we actually got a request to interview you, and man, we appreciate it. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you for looking back, and it was a fun time in my life. I'll take it to the grave. That was a good time. Had a lot of fun. Got to meet a lot of interesting people. Titorov was one of the guys that I was absolutely blown away. How tough that man was. Remember those knees that he took to the head? When he came off that out of the ring, his head was so distorted, and I'm looking at him, and you know what he says? And it breaks my heart. He says, "Make sure my mother don't see me like this." That's what he said. That was unbelievable.
Wow. So Scott, thanks so much, brother. We
thank
appreciate
you very
your
much.
time.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Well, there we go. Scott Ferrozzo's in the books, an old school guy. Classic stuff, Mike. What do you think?
Sometimes an ass kicking to change somebody. And, that Vitor Belfort was something special and made him consider, I think, fighting from that point on. But also he was a successful guy and he accomplished his goal. So, to his credit, he knew he was hanging around doing something that he didn't set out to do, in the first place. So good historic interview. I'm very, very happy with it.
Yeah, we get starstruck. And I mean literally, because I think we should have asked him about CTE and concussions and stuff like that, because he hinted a couple of times throughout the interview, and my memory's not there, and see what he says and things like that, because but what he did remember was gold. It's great stuff, and I love him for it. He's still kind of a jovial dude. I don't know if that's the right word, but I think he's like a pretty happy dude. Like overall, I don't think he has a lot of regrets, and he seems like he's happy where he is in his life now. And he definitely gave us, a good interview, an hour and a half, and I'm excited to have the Pitbull done. That was great.
Also what we are noticing is that people are starting to step up. Genghis Conrad is doing all the times. You're going to notice that there's chapters on all of our interviews, and that's because of Genghis Conrad. We got Crowbar constantly sharing our stuff on different message boards. Guys, your efforts are not unnoticed, and we sincerely appreciate it, because all of us here, including yourselves, are doing this as a passion project. And, any little exposure we can get certainly helps. So, Miguel, we got another one in the books. Let's talk about who we got in our crosshairs. Chris Brennan, we've already contacted him. We're going to work something out. We have not started recording. We got Sam Greco from Australia. We're trying to get back up to Canada again. And I don't know. I mean, we've got a kind of a hit list that we're working on. Diego Sanchez as well. He's been sick, unfortunately. Hopefully Monty Cox back on in January. So it's going to be pretty good. I think we got some good little interviews in the wings.
Check out the full interview on iTunes, Spotify, and all major podcast platforms.